What's up, good people? Back for another draft show here on the Lightning Round podcast. Garrett, Jamie, Craig, we're all here again. This time covering running backs, tight ends. All three of us are going to break down a running back. We'll give a sleeper. Same with tight ends. Give a sleeper. We'll talk about some of these guys that are being mocked to the Chargers early on at 21. So, thanks, Craig, for coming back again. We appreciate you. If you didn't already know, Craig's part of the Lightning Round podcast audio feed now. So not only is he on the YouTube channel, make sure to catch him on the feed. If you're listening to the podcast, he dropped I Got 5 on it yesterday. So go check that out. And we are no longer on Bolts from the Blue. So make sure you're subscribed everywhere you need to be: YouTube, Patreon, podcast, Facebook, Twitter, whatever else. You know where to find us. But today it's all about running backs. It is all about running backs and tight ends. So we got a question here. This is kind of a little background inside baseball here from Jack. He says, "Hey, how do you go about choosing your prospects to watch?" First of all, the top guys that are basically being mocked in the first, if not second-ish round, are the guys we talk about. So since there's three guys now, Jamie, Craig, and I, for this podcast, we picked the top three running backs and the top three tight ends that are being mocked, kind of the consensus top guys. And then Jamie, Craig, you guys can get into your process, but from there on out, I kind of just go down the list and start watching guys, and I ask around a little bit to see if there's any guys to watch, and we just kind of watch. And then when somebody hits, that's when I'm like, I like this guy. I'm going to choose him as my sleeper. Craig, how are you going about it?
Pretty similarly, actually. So what I typically do is I'm a college football guy, so I'm familiar with a lot of the top names. And there's some guys here and there that I keep up with just because I might run across them while watching a random game. And so they just kind of stick. But what I also do is, after we kind of get through the top guys, I'll look at some names that maybe I didn't pay very close attention to, go back over their tape. I'll give them maybe half a game to show me something. If it works, then I'll add them to the list. If not, moving right along. We don't have that kind of time to waste. So essentially, just kind of go through the process of names that I'm familiar with, and then just do some digging to find out where some of the top guys land statistically, and then see what matches up on tape, and also whether or not they're a fit for the team that we support and cheer for. So,
And Jamie, well, what's your process like?
Yeah, it's pretty similar. I'll start out by pulling up a list. I'll usually, Google the top, a list of the top 10 or 15 guys and try to figure out who I have time to watch among the top guys. And that usually boils down to the top 5 or 6 guys. And then I'll start digging deeper into the list and start watching guys for a sleeper. And it's kind of the same thing like you guys said. I'll start, and if somebody hasn't hooked me by the first 5 to 8 minutes of the first video I'm watching, then I'm done and I'm moving on and looking to the next guy. And it's probably not the most efficient process, because it means that there are guys that you start watching that you don't finish and they don't get graded, and there's an opportunity to grade more people. But when we have a week between shows, kind of have to manage your time a little bit better, and you can't watch guys if they're putting you to sleep.
This is like college. This is a cram session, man. We got deadlines to get to. We can't stop and do any funny business here. Yeah, it's the same thing, man. I try to give them a full game if I can. But yeah, you gotta just move it forward. And really what ends up happening is, we end up if we stuck with it and watched every guy, we'd watch 200 guys. The Chargers only picked 2 of those 200 guys we watched. Then we got to go back and watch the other 5 guys that they drafted that we didn't get to watch. So,
and I like being married, actually. So
that's a plus. Yeah, being a good dad, being a good husband, that all comes into play too. And happy Friday, Anthony. Thanks for joining us here on the live draft show. So let's just get right into it. We'll start with running backs. We'll each talk about it. These guys, and then we'll move on to sleepers. And Jamie's going to lead us off here. And it's a guy that's actually being mocked to the Chargers, kind of polarizing for a lot of Charger fans early on. It is Bijan Robinson out of Texas.
Yeah, so once again, I draw the long straw. So thank you for that. I keep getting the top guy in each class. I appreciate.
You want to start rotating? We can start rotating. You want to do that, Craig?
Hey Garrett, I'm good with it. I mean, Jamie, I don't know what you got going on, man. Do I have to bribe somebody, or how's this work?
Seniority, Craig. Seniority.
Got to earn my stripes. I get
You
it.
got to earn your stripes. So actually, Bijan is one of the few guys that we're going to talk about that I don't have to like dig into my notes on because everything about him pretty much stands out. He's clearly one of the top players in this class. Depending on who you talk to, it's anywhere from top 20 to top 5. I'm pretty sure by the time all is said and done, he's going to be somewhere in the top 10, 12 in my class, if not higher. Bijan is a guy who, I mean, he basically does it all. He's got great vision. He is effective inside and outside. He's able to string moves together really, really well. It makes him fun to watch. I mean, sometimes it seems like he's got eyes in the back of his head. You know, I don't know if you guys noticed that watching him, but he'll get in the hole. He'll make a jump cut before his foot hits. He's spinning. And then as soon as he comes out of the spin, he's cutting one way or the other upfield and he's picking up 15 to 20 yards. And it's like automatic. He's the total package. He lines up all over the field. He can play in the slot. He can play out wide. He can come out of the backfield and catch the ball. He's got great hands. He high points the ball really well. Elite speed, power, balance, the whole package. He is a lot of fun to watch, and he's a guy who one of the few backs in this class who I think can be really effective in pretty much any scheme and be a lead back and be, you know, a high-end producer in pretty much any scheme in the NFL.
And so what's your grade on him?
My grade on Bijan is an 86.
Robinson didn't get a first-round grade.
Nobody is.
Nobody's getting first-round grades.
Wow.
What I noticed, I felt like for a while I was giving too many first-round grades. A lot of guys getting like mid to high 90s, and I'm scaling it back, and I admittedly probably overcorrected a little bit, but he's still going to wind up having probably a top 5 to 10 grade in this class by the time it's all said and done.
And you gave him an 86, 87, what'd you say?
86.
It's going to be a top 5 grade. That is wild, Jamie. Wow. So you got really strict with these grades. Craig, first round grade for Bijan or no?
Oh yeah.
Okay. All right. Me and Craig are on the same page. So tell me about Bijan, and then let's talk about, because he's obviously polarizing. We'll talk about what we think about him at 21. But go ahead, Craig, as the player.
All right, so let's get straight to the point. This is the belle of the ball when we're talking about the running back class. There's really no comparison with anyone else. Now, there's some other really good names, but Bijan is the guy. Mm-hmm. Ironically enough, Jamie, you're in Arizona. That's where he's from, or where he played high school ball at. So, interestingly enough, but so I have this thing now. I think a couple of guys are going to make this list. I'm going to call it the BSDC. It's the Big Swinging D Committee. And Bijan might be the founder. I don't know. He's going to be the first person in. But when we're talking about just like prototypical size, I mean, he has that as a back. I've seen some comparisons to LaDainian Tomlinson, which I'm not doing that. I mean, I have guys that I feel like make really, really good comps. I'm not huge on comping, especially to Hall of Fame players, but I think he probably looks a little closer to Edgerrin James. I think I've seen Daniel Jeremiah make that comparison, but I look at Bijan like football Batman. Essentially, he's got like the full utility belt when we're talking about moves. He's got the jump cut, dead leg, plant and spin, hop and go. It's like all there, along with the contact balance. I will say that I think he is a very fast guy, but I don't think he has elite top end speed. I've actually seen him be run down a couple times watching tape, and he's got elite acceleration is what it is. He reaches top speed in a blink of an eye. So when he sees a crease, he hits it, and it's going to be really difficult to catch him within the first 5 to 10 yards if you don't make contact to slow him down. Now, if you have an angle on him, you can probably catch him, but I do think he still has above average speed, just not elite top tier speed. He isn't what you would consider a power runner, but he does have an extremely powerful lower half. And when he runs square, it allows him to generate power through arm tackles. So he's not an easy guy to get down, and he does continue to drive once you make contact. So arm tackles won't do it against him. Jamie kind of mentioned it as far as flexibility goes. He'll work in a zone or gap scheme. He's kind of also like an RPO cheat code, because you have to think about what an RPO entails and where you have to be disciplined. If you think about a linebacker watching the quarterback fake that handoff, because it's Bijan, they're going to respect it and they're going to suck up almost every time. And there's almost always going to be a gap behind it. Or if you want to look at a situation where they're running some sort of read option play, that end is probably going to crash down. And if you have an athletic quarterback that can hit the edge, he's going to get some easy yards that way too. So essentially, you can make him the centerpiece of an offense, even though in the NFL today, it's always backed by committee. But he's a dude that can get 20 plus touches a game. And I mean like 20 carries, not necessarily having to manufacture him in the passing game, and he'll be just fine. But if you want to use him in tandem with someone else, that'll work too. But as far as the backs go, he's that dude for me. I have him with a 92 overall grade, so definitely a first rounder for me.
Yeah, and we know the Chargers have labeled Bijan as the real deal in quotes, so they like him too. And we're not that far off. One thing we haven't talked about is what a good pass catcher he is. Such good hands in the passing game. And to me, I thought early on didn't look very good as a pass blocker. I thought his snaps as a pass blocker this past season was better than in past seasons. So I think he improved in that regard. But he really is a game changer at the running back position. My only real critique, since everybody's talking about how good he is that I think he overthinks his running lanes a little too often. I think he's looking for that big play to break off, causing him to dance a little too often in the backfield, waiting for a hole to open up. But I can't really blame him for that, because he's always trying to take that home run swing. This is by far the best back in this class. I know that a lot of teams have kind of soured on a first round running back, and I know fans have too, but this is the only man in this class that deserves and warrants a first round selection in this class, in my mind. And I actually went back and looked at my grades for the past years, and Bijan has the same exact grade and the only first round grade I've given to a running back since 2018, which was Saquon Barkley coming out of college. And they both had a 91. So not saying they're the same player, got the same grade, but thought Saquon was NFL ready. Bijan, easy 3-down RB1 right away. So, and like Jamie and Craig already talked about, put him anywhere, he's going to succeed. Doesn't matter what system. He's good. He's a real good running back, and first round grade 91 for me. So right below Craig, but still first round grade.
Yeah, there were a couple of things that I saw that I wouldn't necessarily say I didn't like, but I think were kind of helped bring the grade down a little bit for me. One was, you mentioned the blocking. He wasn't a very good blocker early on. He got better, but I still think he's a pretty average blocker overall. He's willing. I think he's physical enough to do it. You'll see him throw shoulders into guys, chipping and things like that, but he's not a great blocker. I think there's room for improvement there. And the power, which Craig mentioned, he's not a power back. He's not going to run over people. I don't think he's a guy who's going to move the pile very often, but he's got such good balance, and his lower half is so strong that he'll step through ankle tackles. He'll break arm tackles. And if you don't get him in the first, like Craig said, in the first 5 yards, he's probably going for 15 to 20, because he's going to hit that top speed and he's going to be gone. A lot of fun to watch, though.
Yeah.
As far as the power is concerned, one more thing I wanted to add in there. I noticed this. He's not automatic in the red zone, particularly around the goal line. Saw a couple of games where he was actually stuffed on consecutive carries, and it wasn't something that I was expecting, because he is such an explosive runner. You think he'd be a little bit better in that regard, but he runs behind his pads, but he doesn't get as low as what you need to in the red zone and around the goal line. So instead of like submarining and kind of burrowing in, he still uses the same running style that he would like within the green area of the field, as opposed to kind of hunkering down, getting a little lower to try to power his way into the end zone.
Yeah, which is why they ran Rashawn Johnson in that goal line area a lot. He was kind of that thunder to Bijan Robinson, that he was the goal line back. I had to go back and watch that guy actually right before we did the show.
Mm-hmm.
That most of his carries this year were at the goal line when Bijan stopped on first and second down, and he was great on that short yardage area. So yeah, Robinson obviously a weakness when it came in the red zone and those goal line situations.
Yeah, did you guys notice too? I noticed a few times where it seemed like he was going to break big runs, and it seemed like, I don't know if the turf monster got him, or it seemed like he got out a little bit over his feet and he'd trip on his feet a little bit and give guys a chance to catch him from behind.
I think what happens, especially in the open field, it's almost like he's not used to running so free. He gets in his own head about it, and then he kind of gets out over his toes a little bit. It is strange. I noticed it a little bit. So no, you're not off at all.
So real quick before we talk about him at 21, where do you guys rank Bijan? I just mentioned that I hadn't had him running back ranked as high as Bijan since Saquon. So I didn't have Josh Jacobs, Etienne, or Najee with the first round grade. You guys, do you remember where, just off the top of your head, where you had him there?
I'd have to go back and look. I don't think I had a first round grade for Jacobs. I think I probably had an early to mid second on ATN. I don't remember my grade on Najee. Saquon was a little higher for me, but I think at that point I was also being really
more generous.
A giver. He was a giver.
I was in a more giving mood.
Not tonight. Craig?
Yeah, so it's probably about the same. I don't remember my exact grade at the time for Saquon, but I know that it was a first round. So I think of that list, he was the only first round. There's some names there that I wasn't all that high on going into the draft. Like Najee Harris, I wasn't a huge Najee fan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, me neither. Okay, so let's talk about at 21. How were you guys feeling if B-Rob's there and the Chargers take him with the 21st overall pick? Craig? With your big sigh, I'll let you lead off.
So I understand it. Would I personally do it? No, because I also do believe that there's a reason why, and I know, Jamie called it last year when Spiller got picked in the 4th round, that it was a chance that they probably take once he saw that name was still on the board. I still believe in Isaiah Spiller. And Eckler, I don't foresee Eckler going anywhere. So we get to a point now where you have a running back room where you have to make some decisions. If Eckler's still going to be around, which I don't see any team trading for him and then paying him. So giving up assets and more money, he'll be in the building. Then, Josh Kelly showed some improvement last year. So you're looking at that room and how congested it can get. And the fact that you already have a guy who was the youngest player in the league last year still there, and we don't know what he can do yet. As much as I love Bijan, I wouldn't do it at 21. Now, if you told me there was a situation where the Chargers could trade back, I don't think he'll be there anyway. But if they traded back and for some reason he was still floating down the board and they can pick up an extra second or third rounder, hell yeah, why not?
Mm-hmm. But at 21,
nah, not at 21.
Okay, Jamie,
I'm in a similar boat for kind of different reasons. I like Bijan. I'd understand the pick. I agree that they need to revitalize the running game. I think that's what they're building Isaiah Spiller for. And I think he's suited to doing what they need to do as they develop him and get him some carries. And I know it's hard to believe in that because we haven't seen him for a year, but I think he'll get there. Like Craig, I also don't think Eckler's going anywhere. I don't think he has any leverage. I don't think there's any takers either to pay him what he wants or to trade the draft picks the Chargers want. So I don't see him going anywhere. And I also think the Chargers' issues on the ground are not running back related. I think their issues on the ground continue to be a lack of a clear identity. I think they know who they want to be, but I don't think who they want to be suits who they have on the field. And I don't think they're teaching it very well. So I think getting the offensive line settled and having Eckler and having Spiller ready to pitch in, having Kelly ready to pitch in, I think if they lean more into a power running game and they get away from this where we want to be, Sean McVay, we want to run the outside zone I think if they can get away from that and lean more into a power running scheme, they're going to have more success because it suits their offensive line and it suits their personnel better. I mean, Bijan would be really exciting, but I think they can be very effective and efficient running the ball if they just make some changes in the way they teach the running game and the way they prefer to go about it.
Yeah. Yeah. So unanimously, we're not against the player, just probably the position of need there and the players in which they have at running back doesn't quite fit going that high for a guy like Robinson. So I mean, I agree with you guys. I don't think that picking Bijan Robinson is a bad move because he's a good player, but with the other needs on the board and just adding on to everything else you guys are saying, I just don't know that they have the luxury to take a running back at 21 when they've got so many other holes to fill. And yeah, it's pretty clear that Eckler isn't going anywhere and he's going to play for the team in 2023. So if you've got Eckler and you don't know what you got in Spiller yet, and Kelly flashed at times last year, you add Robinson to the mix, and now you've just got a crowded backfield. You're probably stunting the development of Spiller a little bit. You're basically saying Eckler's out the door. I don't know how happy you'd be about that playing behind Robinson at that point, but I understand it. I think we would all get it if they picked him, but there's too many other needs on the board. And there's just so much, they're going to be behind the eight ball to take a Bijan Robinson, having to take a corner, a wide receiver, a linebacker, an edge. There's just so many other guys that they got to, and tight end. There's so many other holes they have to fill in this draft. Taking a running back is just a luxury they can't take in the first round.
Agreed.
Yep. No doubt.
All right. Okay. So let's move on to the next one then. The next one here is Zach Charbonnet out of UCLA. He began his college career at Michigan, transferred over to UCLA where he broke out. As a rusher, he runs with power. He will run through arm tackles, plays with good contact balance. He has the ability to get skinny in the hole, even as a bigger back, which is pretty impressive. He's got good hands in the passing game. Also saw he hadn't fumbled at all with 200 plus carries for the Bruins. So pretty impressive there too. He doesn't have home run speed, but he does have an extra gear when he hits the open field. The bad for me, when he gets one-on-one with a defender, Charbonnet doesn't really consistently make guys miss. He can run through you. If you dive low, you're gonna have a hard time bringing him down, but he doesn't have the agility to really free himself consistently. He also runs stiff with his hips. He also runs upright. So with Zach Charbonnet, bigger power back, probably needs a second or third running back behind him, but could have some 3-down potential down the road. Has enough juice to break off a big run on the ground, but kind of lacks that breakaway speed to turn it into 7, lacks the agility, runs too upright, and the hips are really stiff in my mind. So I've got a low second-round grade, an 80 on Zach Charbonnet. He is RB2 for a lot of people, but for me, I've got him a little bit lower. He's got an 80 for me. Jamie, where are you at with Charbonnet?
So I agree with most of what you said. I think he's kind of that like old school power back. He's not really going to make you miss. There's not a lot of shake and bake, not a lot of wiggle. Very tight hipped. I think the feet can look kind of heavy at times. I think the vision is okay, not great, but okay. And because he runs so upright and because he's so tight and he's not going to make people miss, I think he's going to take a lot of hits and he's going to take a pounding.
Yeah.
And it might lead to a bit of a shorter career. I think there is some 3-down potential there, or at the very least, he'd be good as a tandem, as the kind of the thunder and lightning package.
Yeah.
Catches the ball well. He's got really good hands. Catches the ball outside of his frame. There's a lot of good there. I just think he's kind of a high floor, low ceiling kind of a guy. I don't think he elevates a running game necessarily. I don't think he's a guy who's going to be, top of the league in rushing yards or really breathe life into a running game, but I think he's going to be productive. I'm lower on him than you are. I have a 72 on him. So wow. 3rd round grade. I thought he was boring.
Jamie with an egg for Easter on Charbonnet. All right. So Craig, where
Rotten
are you?
Egg.
Rotten egg.
All right, so I made no bones about it. I'm not a huge Zach Charbonnet fan. I respect the type of running back he is. I mean, you look at him, first thing you notice is dude is ridiculously rocked up. You have to be like a different type of cat to want to make contact with him. So like looks like Tarzan, runs like Juggernaut. Like literally he invites contact, but he'll use that to set defenders up a little bit. So you'll see him try to exhibit a little elusiveness in the open field. My real introduction to him was against LSU in 21, where he wasn't trying to hit like any of that SEC nonsense. And he spent the better part of the game like running through the faces of defenders at all three levels. So I'm not what you would consider an LSU fan, but they are in my heart, unfortunately. I don't know how that works. So, it was a difficult game to watch. But I think once he gets momentum, it's really, really difficult to bring him down. The thing is, he kind of gets it going and then you're in trouble. And I mean, I've already stated this. I hate the aesthetic of his running style. I mentioned this before in a conversation outside of here with you guys. He reminds me of Jamal Lewis. It's just the dirtiest, nastiest, ugliest looking running form. It gets the job done, but it won't be pretty. And I mean, that's not what it's all about. If you want a rugged old school running back, he's the type of guy that you want. But he showed a little bit as a receiver, not a ton. Nothing that he does looks exceptionally pretty. Even catching the ball, it doesn't look supernatural. As far as some of the other things that worry me a little is just like Jamie said, he's probably going to take a lot of contact because of his style of running. He doesn't have very much foot quickness, and he doesn't really have like a jump cut. It's more like a shuffle, also not really pretty, but it works and it's effective because guys are accustomed to him just kind of barreling through them. So it doesn't take very much for him to make a move laterally to make someone miss because they're anticipating him going head on with them. And I mean, something that you're always taught as a defender, you're supposed to see what you hit. I saw guys duck their head. It looks like they whiffed because they may have closed their eyes, anticipating contact, and he makes just the slightest move and he'll go right by him. But again, it's really difficult to bring him down with one defender because of his style of running. But outside of just the fact that he's a bulldozer, I don't love anything else about him. He's still a value as a running back in a tandem. Again, like Jamie mentioned, kind of like, if he's going to be the Thunder to a Lightning, great. I have him with a low second round grade at an 81.
We're right there, Greg. One off again. But man, yeah, I like the Juggernaut. Runs like Juggernaut, but upright like the Tin Man almost. But I like the Juggernaut comp there. Yeah. This is I have a feeling we're low. The three of us are lower on him than most because seems to be RB2 across the board. I just don't see anybody else jumping him in everybody else's rankings. But we'll get to all that when we put our rankings down here. All right. So the last one that all three of us covered together is Jahmyr Gibbs. Craig, the smaller back out of Alabama.
Yeah. So one of the first notes I have about him is he's dynamic. I mean, like circus high wire level balance with crackhead speed. And if you know, you ain't catching a crackhead.
Never.
Just kind of like the definition of like a creator or playmaker. I say this all the time. It's something that the Chargers actually lack. And I'm not saying this is like him being a potential fit for the team. I mean, in the event that like Eckler were to be traded and they took a Gibbs, I would understand because he could fill the Eckler role. He has a little bit of that Reggie Bush thing to him where he looks like he's just moving at a different speed than everyone else on the field and that he can be used in the passing game. No, I'm not saying he's Reggie. He just kind of has like similar movement skills and that explosiveness. He has kind of like that same impact. And the fact that he looks like he's moving so much quicker than everyone else made his tape a little bit more fun for me to watch, even though there were some things that I'll get to in a second that I didn't love. He has like really unfair instincts that match his athleticism. So it's like downright a spidey sense he has for defenders and making guys miss from every angle. He'll be illegal in stretch and zone schemes. At the next level, it's going to be really difficult to, get hands on him in the hole because he can get really skinny and hit a crease, and he's at fifth gear before you can get your hand on him. And if you can't close that airspace in a hurry, it's really similar to Bijan, but it's a little different in the way that he's a smaller body. If you're not getting close to him and closing airspace and getting a paw on him, at least to slow him down, he's probably going to house it. And he has legitimate long speed. So it's not one of those guys that you can help or hope to catch if you get a good angle on him. If he gets in front of you, he's leaving. He doesn't have the size profile you're looking for in the number one back. But again, that all kind of depends on your scheme. And the NFL is all about running back by committee. A team that's planning on giving him like 20 or more touches, nearly half of those are probably going to have to be manufactured through the passing game. As far as a pass protector goes, just don't. Try not to ask him to do it at all. That's not his bag whatsoever. And the thing that really bothers me about him the most is because he's so explosive, you expect to see more from him consistently, but he disappears for long stretches. And I don't know if that was a Bama thing, because Bama's kind of switched up their philosophy offensively in recent years. You used to know them as a real ground and pound team. In the more recent years, they've opened up the passing game with different passing coordinators. They want to kind of keep up with the rest of college football and score more points. But it just seems like he would either not be a part of the game plan if he didn't get going early, or if he had a few bad carries, then Nick was just done with him for the rest of the day. So I would have liked to see him be more dominant more often. But, there were a lot of instances where he just play really well in spurts, and then you go like a game or two where he make one or two plays and that be it. As far as the grade is concerned, he has was a mid-second round grade for me. So I have him at 86.
Ooh, all right. Jamie?
So for me, I love the speed. I love the playmaking ability. I think he's going to be a dangerous weapon in the passing game. I thought he was a little inconsistent as a runner, like Craig said. It seemed like, if the hole is there right away, he can be gone. But if the hole isn't there right away, I felt like he struggled with vision inside sometimes and might be looking to bounce the ball outside a little bit too much at times. And there were times where he caught the ball out in space, either from the slot or on a swing pass or something, and he wasn't making guys miss as consistently as I thought he would. So I like him. He in some ways, he kind of, it's not the right word, but kind of confuses me in the same way that Alvin Kamara did. Like, you can see the skill level, you can see where he can make plays, but it doesn't seem like he put it all together consistently on the field, like Craig said. And you wonder if he just has to be in the right kind of a system to have a fit. So I have a 79 on him. I like the traits. I like the length. I like the explosiveness. I like the speed. I like his ability to catch the ball. Don't like the blocking, like Craig said. I think the vision needs some work. The patience needs some work, and just consistency. It just wasn't consistent enough for me.
Yeah. It's easy to see the type of dynamic playmaker he can be with those flashes of when he does put it all together. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't consistent. And I think a lot of teams might view him as a scat back. I mean, he's 5'9", 199. So, I mean, it's not the frame you want. You don't want him back, obviously pass protecting, but the play speed is a huge weapon. Another thing that I didn't really care for other than being inconsistent is he didn't really put his nose in there and do any of the dirty work in the run game. He never wants to go for those extra yards. He will constantly, his natural state basically is, get me in space. I don't want to be in a phone booth getting those tough 2 to 3 yards when we need it on 2nd and 2 or 3. He's going to bounce it outside as much as he can and try to get in space, which he's going to have to fix in the NFL, obviously. But, in college, he just wanted to make a play every time. So not something he's going to be able to do in the NFL. But, I mean, he's a high-end RB2 right away in my mind. I just feel like if you get him heavily involved in the run game, just get him some manufactured touches and space, it's going to really help him reach his ceiling. Just let him be an athlete. He might be able to be more of a kind of a 50-50 guy later on, like a Tony Pollard type system where you're splitting carries with a more power back, maybe later on in his career. But early on, getting him in space, letting him get some manufactured touches, I think it'd be huge for him. And I just think the flashes of it, you could easily see why he could be a dynamic playmaker in the NFL. I've got an 84 on him, which is a mid-second. all three of us have him higher than Zach Charbonnet.
Yeah.
about
Something else to throw in there really quickly. So, as most probably know, he was a Georgia Tech transfer over to Bama. So if you want to kind of understand why he's not necessarily just a product of the Alabama system, if you want to see, what he's really capable of, go back and watch 2021 against Virginia. He's pretty much all Georgia Tech had, and he was making plays out of the backfield with 2 and 3 guys waiting for him to take the snap. He was creating out of the backfield, making guys miss, and essentially he was getting 7 and 8 yard gains where he should have been getting, -2, -3. So the guy definitely has the juice to make it happen. He wasn't just effective because he played for Bama. As some guys can kind of get that label. You play for a stud school like that. If you have any ability at all, it'll probably stand out. But no, he was definitely a player before the transfer.
Mm. All right. Well, let's move on. So this is the end of our list we do together. So let's talk about some sleepers, some guys we liked while watching this class. Jamie, why don't you start us off? What running back is your sleeper?
So when I was looking for sleepers, I was looking for somebody who I thought might possibly fit in with the Chargers if they're looking to make a change as a rotational piece.
Same.
So I wasn't necessarily looking for somebody who's going to step in and be a starter. It's maybe somebody who is more going to offer something the Chargers don't have right now. So the guy that I wound up settling on after some back and forth was actually Eric Gray from Oklahoma. Gray is, I thought I was going to be kind of bored with him, but I enjoyed watching him play. He's not a burner by any stretch of the imagination, but he's got quick feet. He's got loose hips. He's able to make people miss both in tight quarters and in the open space. He finishes every single run. There were lots of plays that I watched where it seemed like he was going to get tackled, 10 yards downfield by both safeties, and he'd somehow wind up splitting the safeties and taking a house call. He's a little small. I think he's 5'9" or 5'10", 208. So he's short, but he's thickly built. He's pretty burly for somebody who's 5'8", 5'9", however tall he is. And he just runs with a tenaciousness that I enjoy. He's physical. He finishes his runs. He's got a nose for the end zone. I think he'd be a really good rotational piece. He's a guy who I'm looking at day 3. And I've got a 71 on him.
I like him. He reminded me of some like Dearness Johnson in him. Some speed, some power. I think it's a good mix. What is your grade? Sorry, I missed that part.
71.
Okay. Yeah, I had a 68 on him. But yeah, somebody at the end of day 2, early day 3. Nice little addition to a running back stable. Craig?
Yes, I didn't get to watch Gray. Came up kind of late in the process for me, but I know Jamie said some good things about him, so I'll definitely be checking him out. My guy is Israel Abanikanda from Pittsburgh. So, Jamie, I'm going to ask you a question. You're more of a baseball guy than me. Who's a player that is either going to smoke one, however many hundreds of feet, or strike out?
Giambi.
It's like no in between.
Oh, there's lots of those guys.
Yeah, Giambi.
I'll give you one.
Okay. So if you want to call him Giambi, then that's what he is in football. He's a home run hitter. He's got track speed that shows up between the lines. You know who he looks like? Everybody remember Michael Bennett from Wisconsin? Same guy.
Oh, okay.
Who actually, ironically enough, played a season for the Chargers, didn't he? I think it was in like 2008. The Chargers love getting names late when they're washed, and then everybody gets excited and forget that the reason why they're a Charger now is because they suck.
Bob Sanders, Jacoby Jones. Yeah, those.
Please don't remind me about Bob Sanders.
Sorry.
I was so excited. I was so excited for Bob Sanders. But he same kind of guy. One of those one cut zone running backs. He's gonna make himself or he's going to make a team and he's going to surprise a lot of people. I could see this dude being a 49er. It makes perfect sense. They kind of love getting their mid to later round running backs also. I know they have Christian McCaffrey, but I could easily see them taking a shot on a Abanikanda at some point. He's 5'10", 216 pounds. So he's really well built. And to be able to move. I think he ran 4.41 at his pro day. I don't think he tested at the combine. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure he ran 4.41 at his pro day. He led the ACC in rushing last year, and dude seemingly had like a personal vendetta against Virginia Tech. He ripped them in 21 and last year, and the latter year to the tune of like 320 yards and 6 touchdowns. It was pretty ridiculous. The entire game looked like a highlight tape. It's just, I don't know what was going on, but he is something personal against Vitek. He understands angles and how to protect himself from taking really big shots against defenders. He's also another very young back. I think he's only 20, and he doesn't have a ton of tread on the tires. So a team will be able to get like multiple years out of him. So really good production, especially as part of a backfield by committee. Again, like I mentioned, he's well put together and he plays behind his pads. He doesn't really show great instincts in traffic though. So he can't really be counted on to turn a little into a lot. He needs a little bit more room to operate, and not much to write home about as a receiver or in BPU blitz pickup. It's just something that needs to be worked on. I wouldn't ask him to do it straight out of the gate. Probably best suited, like I said, for a zone scheme. I wouldn't necessarily say he's all that versatile. He does also have questionable vision and feel for developing for running lanes that are developing. So he has to see it first. There's almost no anticipation with him. And he's a very linear runner, so not much to offer in the way of lateral quickness, and he doesn't really possess an array of moves as a ball carrier. I did like the fact, like I said, that he's a home run hitter. Is exciting. When he gets in the open field, it's a wrap. You're not catching him. But other than that, there isn't a ton to him. I gave him a low 3rd round grade as a 71.
Okay.
Oh, and I know you guys thought, everybody out there, y'all thought I was going to pick Deuce Vaughn. Just because I know him, doesn't mean he was going to be my sleeper. I love Deuce, but no, that can be someone else today.
You know everybody, Craig. So no,
apparently
we're not going to. All right, so let's move to my sleeper, and I kind of did the same thing. I wanted a home run hitter. I wanted to add some wiggle to this running back group for the Chargers, and that guy for me is Sean Tucker out of Syracuse. He's explosive. He ran track at Syracuse, 5'9", 207, and not only does he have the home run ability, but he's a tough kid to bring down. He runs really low to the ground for a shorter back. Great contact balance and agility, pretty physical at his size too. He was used as a 3-down back at Syracuse. He got involved in the passing game a lot too. They lined him out wide. They lined him up in the slot. He is a one cut and go type runner. The thing that he does struggle with is the decisiveness in the backfield at times. But even though he's undersized, runs like a bigger back, he's got breakaway speed, a weapon as a receiver. If anyone wants to add gas to their lineup, Sean Tucker is your day 3 option. I've got a 71 on him, which is a low 3rd. A guy you could probably get in the 4th, maybe end of the 3rd round. A guy who I think could really add some speed to a team's backfield, which I think the Chargers need. So, boys, let's go through our top, how many guys you went through. I went through 12. I've got 12 grades here. Jamie, you got your grades up?
Yep, I do.
All right, give them to us.
I'm just going to read the top 8.
Okay.
So I have, now I'm forgetting his first name.
Give me the last name.
McBride.
Dwayne
McBride is my number 8, and I gave him a 67. Tank Bigsby from Auburn, my number 7 with a 70. Eric Gray is number 6 with a 71. Zach Charbonnet. I'm sorry. Wait a minute. I miscounted. So Gray is, let me start over.
Okay.
Dwayne McBride is my number 7 with a 67. Bigsby is number 7 with a 70. Gray is number 6. Am I counting that right?
You don't have numbers next to it? Sorry, Jamie. We can wait for you.
Sorry. My bad.
It's all right.
Charbonnet's next with a 72. Gibbs and Devin Akane are tied with a 79, and Bijan Robinson with an 86 is my number 1 running back.
Okay, Craig?
I realized I left someone off this list, but it's not big though. So don't make fun of me either. Like it says 8 listed here, but the way it's on my spreadsheet, it's off on numbers. So it's really 6.
Guys,
anyway,
come on.
So At 6, Israel Abanikanda with 71. At 5, I have Tank Bixby with a 76. 4, Zach Charbonnet, 81. 3, Jahmyr Gibbs with 86. 2, Tyjae Spears, Tulane, 87. And number 1, Bijan Robinson, 92.
You got Tyjae Spears at number 2?
I do.
Atta boy. So did nobody watch A-Chain, or did I miss you guys?
I must have mispronounced his name. Yes, yeah. I watched him. He's my number 2.
Oh, he's your number 2?
Him and Gibbs are tied with a 79.
Oh, boys. Okay, let's go. Number 12, I'm just going to rattle these off fast. 12, Dwayne McBride with a 63. Number 11 is Tank Bigsby with a 66. I got Keaton Mitchell at 67 with 10. Is that the one you forgot?
That's who's missing.
Eric Gray at 9 with 68. My sleeper, Sean Tucker at 71. I got Zach Evans at 73 at number 7. The other Texas running back at number 6, Rashawn Johnson with a 74. I got Tyjae Spears at 75 at number 5. Zach Charbonnet at 80 with a number 4 at my 4 back. Devon A-Chain, or Devon, I don't know how to pronounce his first name, with an 82 at number 3. Jahmyr Gibbs, number 2 with an 84, and Bijan Robinson with a 91 at number 1. All right. So here we go. On to the tight ends. Anything else you want to mention about running backs? So are we kind of in agreement that there's there's a good chunk of good running backs there in the middle rounds that these Chargers should probably target?
There's a ton of talent there. If they want to take a shot at it, you definitely don't want to have to go for the grand slam with picking Bijan. I don't think it's necessary. It's like Jamie alluded to before. It's not necessarily that you don't have the talent in the backfield as opposed to the scheme that suits what you have on the roster. So, if they want to take another swing at it, because it seems like something they like doing lately, there's plenty of options there in the middle rounds to select from.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. Jamie, you got anything to add to that? Because that's exactly where I'm going.
No, I completely agree. I don't think Bijan makes sense for them at 21, even though he is an exciting player and I'm sure he's going to be, extremely productive. I just think they have other things to clean up in the running game that will help them. And I think there's more to a running game than running back.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to where are we at? We are at tight ends. And we are going to start with Michael Mayer out of Notre Dame. We'll move down this list. And Jamie, why don't you go ahead and start?
All right. So I'll start with Dalton Kincaid. I know people are mocking him.
What are you doing? You're on Michael Mayer.
Oh, Michael Mayer? I thought I had Kincaid. My bad. I want to talk about Kincaid.
Yeah, nobody wants to talk about Mayer.
I get to talk about Kincaid.
All right. I just got used to getting the consensus best guy in the class. So I got
what a brat.
Yeah, what a brat.
So Mayer is a guy who, watching his tape in 21, I did not enjoy at all. He was a guy who to me looked stiff. He looked kind of awkward at times. The routes weren't all that great. I thought he looked kind of average as a blocker, did Mayer. And he just looked, I don't know, just awkward and uncomfortable to me. It made me uncomfortable watching him. Didn't enjoy it at all. But what I came away with after watching his 22 tape was, I think the guy has a lot of self-awareness, and he clearly worked on things that he struggled with in 21 because he looked like a much more comfortable, confident, fluid athlete in 2022 than he did in 2021. You started to see some things change in his route running. He attacked leverage. You could see him using stutter steps and head fakes, creating separation at the top of his route. He started running some really killer slants in the red zone in particular to score some touchdowns. I think he's a solid athlete for a tight end. I know he tested pretty well, but his athleticism doesn't always translate on the field, in my opinion. He's not an elite athlete at this position, I don't think. I think he's a guy who is going to be very productive in the short and intermediate part of the field. He's probably not going to access the deep part of the field a whole lot. He is going to be a good blocker. I thought his blocking improved quite a bit, particularly in the run game. And at times it was like he was an extension of the pass protection, the offensive line and pass protection. So for me, Mayer's a guy who I think is going to be a very productive tight end. I think he's going to have, like I said, a role in that short and intermediate passing game, probably not going to stretch the field a whole lot. Even though he's a good athlete, I don't think he's going to provide a whole lot of yak. There's not a whole lot of wiggle there. Most of his yak, in my opinion, came on, catches in the middle of the field against zone defense. He wasn't really making guys miss consistently. He's more of a guy who's going to run through a tackle and get tackled by the next guy than he is going to make somebody miss, in my opinion. Let's see. What else do we have here? I think that pretty much covers it. I like Mayer. I think he's a solid player. I think he's being a bit overblown as a prospect in some regards. I don't think he's going to be, super dynamic as a tight end weapon, but he will be productive. I have a second round grade on him. I have an 80 on Michael Mayer.
An 80.
Yep.
Okay. All right, Craig. What do you got?
Yeah, so of the tight ends, this was the least excited I was to watch tape. So, look, 2021 was cream of wheat. 2022, it's like still cut oats with like blueberries or raisins or something. It's okay. It's better. Still not all that appetizing, though. It gets the job done. So he immediately upgrades your run game. As he is an above average blocker, and he uses his frame really well to his advantage to stay attached to defenders. It's kind of playing off of what Jamie says about him being self-aware. He understands his athletic limitations, and he wins a lot by bodying defenders up when he can't gain separation just naturally from his routes. He fights like crazy when he finds himself in contested catch situations, which is often because he doesn't create a whole lot of separation, but he has really strong hands to win at the catch point. He grinds it out for yards after the catch. He makes defenders work to get him on the turf. I saw much more detail, and Jamie mentioned this too, at the top of his routes in 22 than I did in 21. He was using false jab steps, head fakes before the break. He really kind of grew in that area. Now, as far as areas of opportunity, he's not the least bit dynamic as a receiving option. It's not going to change at the next level. If anything, is going to be more. It's going to be exposed a little bit more. He reminds me a little bit of. We're kind of going into NFL time machine. Who was the Pittsburgh Steelers tight end? Heath
Miller.
Heath Miller. He reminds me a lot of Heath Miller. I know a lot of people were saying Jason Witten. He's actually probably more athletic than Jason Witten. It'd be really hard not to be. But I see a little bit more Heath Miller there. His change of direction was painful to watch at times, but that's not what he's built for. He's a good middle of the field safety net, and I mean, that's fine. He'll keep the chains moving, but I wouldn't consider him a real vertical threat really at all. And he's best probably suited as a traditional wide tight end. I mean, you can split him out, but it won't be pretty. Last year versus Ohio State, Notre Dame split him out into like this 2 wide receiver stack set with him off the line of scrimmage. And they threw him a bubble screen. And the edge defender that was in pursuit didn't even have to make the play because Mayer essentially like Charlie Browned himself and tripped over his own feet. It looked ridiculous, which is just a testament to how limited he is as an athlete. I mean, they tried it, just not something you want to do with him very often. I call him Captain Safety because he's probably the safest pick. It feels like something the Chargers would do, even though it doesn't necessarily play into what Staley says about wanting to get somebody that's more of a vertical threat up the seam as a tight end. But I have him with a low second round grade of an 83.
Okay. All right. Well, Craig, you and I are pretty close on this one. Again, we're both on an 83. So, I mean, they lined him up everywhere. Just going off of some of the things you're talking about. I mean, not only is he safe, but they really put him in a lot of different spots. Inline slot, out wide in the backfield, really good frame. I think also, his technique is pretty good running routes, but he's not really that explosive like you guys have kind of talked about. And he's also kind of being pegged as a great blocker. that's paired with this excellent receiving skills, but I don't think he's a very good blocker. I think his hands are pretty inconsistent. He doesn't drive defenders. He just kind of locks up with them. I know there's a few highlights on YouTube and floating around Twitter about him knocking some guys on their ass, but that was just some defenders getting kind of off balance. He's done it from time to time, but he is no way consistent enough in his blocking in my mind. So to me, I mean, he's a fluid route runner, a very large catch radius, hands are strong, has a look of kind of more of a volume tight end than he is a kind of yak guy in the NFL. Heath Miller makes a lot of sense. Not a guy that's going to kind of kill you up the seams. We'll get there from time to time, but he's not going to get a lot of yards off the catch either. So I've got an 83 on Mayer too. So the three of us are pretty close. 80, 83. And yeah, Jamie, Craig and I are the same. Jamie, again, a little lower.
Yeah. Did you guys notice? I noticed it a lot in 21, less in 22, but it was still there. He has a really hard time catching the ball below his waist and outside of his frame in general. If he has to bend over to try to catch a ball, he's going to wind up falling flat on his face more often than not.
Pretty stiff. I think I remember seeing something in his combine testing that kind of spoke to that. I don't know if it was in some of his agilities that were just not pretty at all. He's just not very fluid mover. And again, stiff like that, it very much so limits the type of route you're able to run and your effectiveness at certain levels of the field. And like you said, you're just probably not a guy that you want to expect to catch the ball outside of his frame very much. The ball's pretty much going to have to be on him and allow him to kind of get upfield as quickly as possible once he catches it. You don't want him trying to have to create. It's not going to work out well.
How about this, though? Live grades as we're going, huh?
Ooh.
Nice.
That's why I'm
Garrett
going, yeah, yep. I'm trying to fill time while I'm typing out the grades, creating graphics. So there you go, TJ, who asked for screen graphics. Not a bad idea, but didn't have that prepped. But here we go. We're doing it on the fly. All right, so the next guy here, I'm going to leave this up while we talk about the next tight end that Jamie wanted, but I got. It is Dalton Kincaid, and I deserve this one, damn it. Kincaid, because I was getting second best. Kincaid actually started his college career at USD, which is fun, little fact. Transferred over to Utah. Last season led all tight ends in the nation with an average of 77 yards per game. As a pass catcher, buttery soft hands, really flashed when he got the ball in his hands, built like a wide receiver playing tight end, and shows off that acceleration after the catch. His route running is pretty crisp, showed off the ability to be a red zone weapon at Utah as well. So pretty well-rounded. The knocks on Kincaid. For me, something that the three of us have talked about, but something that concerns me a little bit that I haven't really heard a lot about is the frame. Pretty skinny for a tight end. He is 6'4", 246. You see that light frame really hurt him in the run game, especially when he's got to sit down and anchor. He's also dealt with some injuries. He had obviously the fracture in his back that's kept him out all of testing season leading up to the draft. The other concern for me is he's going to be 24. That's kind of the point of contention right now. He's going to be one of those older rookies heading into his rookie year. And to me, at 24, his frame's pretty developed at this point, and he's already pretty light. The physicality seems to be taking a toll a little bit on his body, hurts him in the run game. With the injury and in the run game. And now if, adding more weight at 24 seems like it's probably out the window. But for me, Dalton Kincaid is an athletic tight end, shows off good hands, route running, ability to gain after the catch. There are certainly some concerns for those that are drafting him in the first round, but I've got a mid-second round grade on Kincaid, which is higher than Mayer. And obviously my tight end one right now, before we talk about anybody else, I have an 85 on Dalton Kincaid.
We are pretty close. I agree with a lot of what you said. I think it's obvious that Kincaid is a really, really good athlete. He's just an easy mover. He makes everything he does in terms of running with the ball in his hands, running his routes, making plays, elevating to make contested catches. He makes a lot of those things look really easy. I think some of his production is a bit of a mirage. He's 23. playing mostly against 18, 19, and 20-year-olds. So, yeah, he's probably going to dominate coming over. Nobody's really seen him. He was a tight end 2 in 21, tight end 1 this year, kind of burst onto the scene, almost unexpected in some ways. He is really good in the red zone. I think a couple things that I have issues with. One is the blocking. The blocking is brutal. It's terrible. I mean, he can get away with kind of do-si-doing with Pac-12 edge rushers and linebackers. Go watch the Florida tape from this year. Go watch him try to block on the goal line when they had to have a yard, and he's getting jacked back 2 or 3 yards into the backfield. He cannot block. It's not a style thing. It's not a, he just has a different way of approaching a thing. He cannot block. Period. End of story. He can't. And he's slightly built, and I'm not sure how much room there is for him to put on more muscle, or if you even want to put on more muscle because of the way he plays his game. So that's one big concern for me. The other big concern for me is I think a lot of his yak is more scheme oriented than it is him oriented. And here's what I mean by that. Almost all of his plays, I would say 85 to 90% of the plays that he made that included yak were wide open catches in the middle of the field against his own defense that just ignored him. And he's 10, 15 yards downfield with no one within 10 yards of him, and he's turning and running the ball upfield. And yeah, he looks great because he's catching the ball in stride and he's taking off running, but there's no one anywhere near him to tackle him. He's not really making people miss. He's just running to open field. So yes, he's generating yak, but I'm not sure that's translatable. And this kind of goes hand in hand with the blocking. I think there are some functional strength issues with him. We mentioned the slight build. We mentioned the blocking issues. He sticks like glue to press coverage. He cannot play through press coverage. You'll see him on the ground when guys get their hands on him because he's just not meant for that kind of physical coverage. So there's a lot to like about him. I mean, he's a contested catch monster. He's great with the ball in his hands. I think the route running is solid, still some room for improvement, but good. He's athletic enough that I think that he's going to make those strides as a route runner. I'm just not sure how translatable some of his production is because I don't see NFL defenses just letting him run free 15 yards downfield on every play, which is what it seemed like I was watching with him. So I have an 84 on him. So we're right in the same ballpark. I'm just a point lower than Garrett. But he's probably still going to wind up being somewhere in the top 15 or 20 of this draft class just because of the nature of the class. But I don't necessarily think he is the player he is being made out to be by everybody.
Okay.
Yep. So I like Kincaid as well. I'm gonna go ahead and say that he's going to be my number 1 tight end in the class, of course. He is today's NFL tight end, fluid athlete. And he's probably going to be more of a volume receiver. He can absolutely attack the seams. He's very good with the ball in his hands, pretty natural as a runner in the open field, really smooth accelerator. He can also often catch his defenders off guard with his suddenness after the catch. So I was a fan of that. He's still relatively new to the game. I think he's only been playing football since like 2017. So there's plenty left to tap into from like a football IQ standpoint and technical nuance for the position. I really like his pacing as a route runner, specifically when running crossers. There were a few snaps in that first matchup versus USC last year where he slow plays his route on a crosser. He gradually picks up speed. And what it did was it allowed Rising to find him in open voids just before he crossed the line of scrimmage when he was booting out. So the timing of it was almost like literally perfect. Plays the ball extremely well in the air and is masterful really at using his late hands at the catch point. Now, as far as the downsides, like has already been mentioned, the dude will be 24 after he's played just like his first full month in the NFL. So that's 1 full month, not a season. He'll be 24 years old. He ain't consistently blocking a soul unless it's Twitter. That's about the only time you're going to see any consistency there. And I know that, the not small. It's a big deal. He was dealing with the back fracture, a small fracture in his back that he sustained during last season. I know he tried to play through it or did play through it for one game, and it kept him out of the combine and his pro day. And even though this is an isolated incident, like, let's be honest, he's nearly 24 years old, and he's already suffered a significant injury. You don't get physically stronger and healthier physically as you age in the game of football. That's not really how it works. So I'm very much so concerned about that. Garrett mentioned it. His frame's probably maxed out, and you don't want to try to put too much more weight on him. Number one, he's already had a back issue. It doesn't mean it's going to be chronic, but additional weight could probably trigger something else. I mean, I don't think I'm reaching there at all. But I just think that with the way that he plays and the size that he is and his age, it's a little risky to spend high draft capital on a guy like that. As a route runner, I would say that, well, actually, no, route running's fine. As far as the route tree is concerned, he has some areas of growth there. There's some opportunity for him to become a little bit better there. I've seen him round off some of the more in-breaking, out-breaking routes, as opposed to really sticking his foot in the ground and making really sharp breaks. He doesn't really do a great job selling the stem of his routes. Essentially, when you're stemming your route, it kind of majority of the time will tell you where the route's going to break out to. Sometimes he just have a very lazy stem, and he didn't run very many routes that countered the actual stem. But like, Jamie mentioned, there were situations where it didn't really matter. He was running the huge open voids in zone where he got away with being lazy in his route running because defenses weren't accounting for him, which made absolutely no sense to me. But I've got a mid-second round grade on Dalton. I have him at an 85.
Same. All right, so here comes the $1 million question and what everybody, I think, tuned in for today. And to answer your question, fitness, he is 23. Dalton Kincaid will be 24 when the season starts. A month in, as Craig said. So, Michael Mayer, Dalton Kincaid, both being mocked to the Chargers. How are we feeling if either one of those go to the Chargers? Jamie, I'll let you start.
I mean, it depends on who else is on the board at the time. I would prefer a wide receiver. I think this particular tight end class is pretty deep, with a lot of guys in the second and third round who are going to produce pretty well. So I don't feel they need a tight end. They need a tight end for the long term. I think it needs to come out of this draft. I don't necessarily think it needs to come out of the first round. But if all the edge players and all the wide receivers are gone and there's somebody they love there, then it's hard to argue about it.
Same. Just depends on who's on the board. I honestly look at a situation here where you look at both players. I've said it a bunch of times already. Michael Mayer is super safe. I can see the Chargers doing that just because A, he's an Notre Dame guy. B, he doesn't necessarily fit the profile of what they claim they want, but it's one of those, he's on the board. He might be one of the highest graded players they have left on their board at the time, so they just take him. Kincaid, I have my qualms about him from a health standpoint and age. Also, if we're being honest, depending on how this offense works, he might be a little redundant to Everett. Everett's probably going to be used a little bit differently in the scheme this year as more of a seam attacking tight end as well. So, there's a question there for me, but would I hate it? It's not my option. In round one, it's not something I would love. A tight end, any tight end actually. And the next one we'll talk about, my love for him is no secret, but I still probably wouldn't take him in the first.
Yeah. I am team no tight end in round one. I think we're kind of all saying the same thing, but we're gonna talk about sleepers here, but there is a plethora of athletes in this tight end class, and I think when you look at the top guys like Dalton Kincaid and Michael Mayer, who have their question marks, Kincaid, and I know Fitness is saying 23 is not too bad, but being 24 is pretty bad when you're entering the NFL. Not great, but there's injury concerns with Kincaid. There's other issues with Mayer, and I think betting on an athlete in the middle rounds is your way to go in this class. There are just so many who we're going to talk about here soon, but I just don't think that it makes a ton of sense bringing in Kincaid or Mayer here in the first round with all the guys that are left on the board in the later rounds. And I think there are bigger, better options to attack in the first round. And I am not on board with either of these tight ends in the first round. They'll both be fine players. I'm okay with it, but man, there's just too many question marks. There's no surefire hits here. I know Mayer is safe, and I know Kincaid has a ton of potential and showed off a lot in his last season at Utah, but I'm betting on the younger, faster athletes in the middle of this tight end class. So I'm out on a tight end in the first round.
Yeah, and I think Stanley made a good point in the chat too, and that is if he's 24 a month into his rookie season, that means he's going to be 29 a month into his fifth-year option, which means now you're evaluating whether or not you want to give a second contract to an almost 30-year-old. Mm-hmm. And that's not really a position you want to be in with a first-round pick.
No. All right. Well,
especially not with back injuries.
Nope. So, got our Dalton Kincaid grades up there. Craig, you got your boy here, Darnell Washington. Let's talk about him. Crack those knuckles and let's get started.
Next inductee into the big swinging D committee. Whew. Paul Bunyan, sized athlete, man. And aside from like him being 6'7", well, yeah, 6 foot. I don't know why I thought he was 6'8". No, he's 6'7". He's nearly 270 pounds. He has freaking 34 and 5/8 inch arms and 11-inch hands. So just a massive human being in general. He can be used in the vertical seams because of his length and above average speed for a player of his size. Of course, super physical after the catch. He looks to punish defenders who all but shy away from contact when he's square running downhill. A massive catch radius also. So he uses his long arms to extend and catch passes away from his body and in front and over and around defenders, basically playing this, elaborate game of keep away with them. He's got really good body control to adjust to poorly thrown balls. There's a game that stands out to me where he is kind of showing a little bit of everything that he could potentially be at the next level. It was against Missouri this past year. This is one play that kind of gives you a glimpse into it. What he can be as a receiving threat at the next level. So he lines up. Georgia came out and I think it was like 21 personnel. So 2 running backs, a tight end, and 2 wide receivers. Washington is like an offset Y. He runs a rail route to the short hash, which is really well defended, by the way. And for some reason, he's able to extend around the defender, catches the ball, uses his stiff arm to keep him at bay. Then he attempts to hurdle the safety who tries to tackle him in midair, and Washington basically like scissor kicks the dude and almost knocks him out. It's like the most entertaining 25-yard play you'll see in football. But you got a little bit of everything in that play from him as a receiver. You see the ability to, even though he's not someone who's going to create separation, he can use his size, his mass, his long limbs to still, get the ball in contested catch situations. You can see the athletic ability. He does the hurdling thing a little bit too much, but it's just like, I love it. A dude that huge jumping over people just looks really cool. Also, there is, hold on. I haven't even talked about what he does best, right? I'm sitting here talking about him as a receiver. He's an otherworldly blocker, and he can basically do it from practically like any alignment. Once he's attached, he runs his feet until he buries defenders. And we're not just talking about like little secondary guys either, or like 220-pound ex-safeties that are playing linebacker. If you go back and watch the SEC championship game, you can see him having a field day with BJ Ojulari. I know he's a lot of people are hiring him as an edge in this class, but he's getting at everybody. He's not discriminating whatsoever. It doesn't matter where you play on the field. He's such a dominant force as a blocker that teams kind of lose track of him on delayed routes where like he'll pause in protection and he'll leak out and no one will defend him at all because they're just assuming that he's probably sitting there in pass protection looking to pick someone up. If you can imagine a 6'7", 270-pound dude just sneaking by anyone. He was also the number 2 behind Brock Bowers, who's probably going to be next year's tight end number 1 in the draft. So there's plenty left to develop there, plenty of meat on the bone. As far as the things that have to be worked on, there's a lot. I mean, he's still pretty raw in regards to being a receiver. His lack of production is a problem. But I mean, again, that's not what he was asked to be at Georgia, a primary receiver. He was asked to block more so than anything else. Only had 45 receptions and 774 yards total for a career. So definitely not impressive. He has runway speed. So, it takes him a while to build it up. But when the big man's moving, he's moving. But if you can get to him before he builds up momentum, you can probably halt his forward progress, especially if you gang tackle him. He won't ever be a huge separator in the passing game. He'll mostly find himself in contested catch situations where he's going to have to be a yak guy. So don't expect him to see him running free unless there's some busted coverage situations. He's got no true route tree to speak of, as that really wasn't his job. He wasn't called upon to be that nuanced at Georgia. He needs to work on his blocking technique. Even though he loves burying guys, he has an issue where he lunges too often and he ends up chest over toes, and it causes him to lose balance. And sometimes he'll even overrun his target because he is not breaking down properly. All this, and I told you guys know I love him. He's probably my personal favorite tight end in this class. Of course, he's not the highest graded, but just a dude that I clearly have some adoration for. He ends up being a low second round pick for me. I have him with a grade of an 80.
Okay. All right. Jamie, you want to take him or you want me to go next?
No, I'll take him.
Okay.
I agree with a lot of what Craig said. I think there's a lot to like about Darnell Washington, not the least of which being his blocking, which I love the way Georgia used him as a blocker. It seemed like he was always pulling, always climbing. He was always out in space, just looking to kill guys. And he, like Craig said, he is the kind of guy as a blocker who would transform the running game. And that's something that I think, they shot for with Trey McKitty. It hasn't worked out. Maybe he'll get better. Who knows? But if you're looking for somebody who is going to come in and execute his blocks year one, and who maybe wants some time to develop as a receiver, Washington is the kind of guy you want to look for. In terms of his receiving ability, I mean, he's a fantastic athlete. You can see it when he gets the ball in his hands. He's able to make people miss. He'll hurdle guys running at full speed. He's more of a, I'm going to run you over than I'm going to make you miss, but he does have some make you miss in him. I think the hands are a tad bit inconsistent. They are big and they are strong. And he did in 2022 develop to the point where he was able to extend outside of his frame, use his frame to create separation, extend outside of his frame and make catches. And they started using him more, not necessarily as a primary receiving option, but they'd split him out wide. They put him in the slot. They moved him all over the formation. They'd have him run slants from out wide. They started having him run some wheel routes and go routes. They'd throw back shoulder fades to him. And he started having a lot of success. I think about midway through 2022, towards the end of the year, he really started to develop as a pass catcher and as a weapon in that regard. I think the route running developed. It still needs some work. The awareness of when to sit, when to extend plays, when the quarterback gets in trouble, that can still use some work. Like Craig said, he hasn't played a lot of football. He hasn't been on the field a whole lot the last few years. He was basically tight end 3, I want to say, in 2021 and was tight end 2 in 2022. There is a lot to develop. And if you are going into the year with a guy like Gerald Everett, who you already know can make plays, and you're looking to upgrade the running game, and you're looking to develop somebody long-term, I think Washington is the guy you want to look at. So I am in a very similar ballpark with Craig. I'm just a tick lower. I'm at a 79, but still pretty high on a guy who didn't have the production necessarily to carry him as a first or second round pick. But I think Washington is kind of the, medium floor, high ceiling kind of guy, where if you get him in the right system and you use him properly and he's well coached, he's probably going to develop into a pretty fun weapon in the passing game. And he's going to help transform the running game. So I'm at a 79 on Darnell Washington.
Okay. So I got my own comp for him. I'm just gonna, let me stop this and give you, just because we're here on doing graphics and all that, it's this right here. Anybody remember Guru from Mortal Kombat? That big motherfucker with 4 arms. This is Darnell Washington to me. This is, and I put even a 0 on his chest because this is
I caught that.
You got that?
Yeah.
The elite blocking tight, and that's a quick Photoshop, by the way. Elite blocking inline tight end. 6'4", 264. I mean, he boxes out defenders. He can body guys in contested catches. He's an animal, an absolute monster as a blocker. He's got a beautiful mix of power, got some straight line speed, like Craig mentioned, if he can build up to it. Change of direction. I can't believe how fast he is. Just like Guru here. You can't believe how fast he is in the video game. It's just like Darnell Washington. He is much quicker than you'd ever believe. And he tested that way, and it shows up on tape. It just, to me, even though he didn't get a lot of play, it just seems like a guy that's just scratching the surface, a guy you'd love to sit behind Gerald Everett, come in and be ready next year as your starting tight end 1. He can come in and set an edge in the run game right away. His athleticism should get him drafted higher than his college production. He can be a really, really, really good red zone weapon with some physicality. I've got the same grade as Jamie. It is a 79. Guru or Darnell Washington, an absolute beautiful pick at later on after round 1, obviously. If they trade down and could get him, I'd love him there. But this is Darnell Washington is a beautiful kind of nice addition to the game if they can get him. I don't know that he's going to be around in their second round pick, but he would just absolutely fit perfectly with the Chargers.
So there's been a lot of talk in the Discord about Washington at 21. Is that something you guys are comfortable with?
I once was, but not. Yeah, after some consideration, thinking it through, and understanding needs. Nah. I'm said before. If they trade back, I'm good. Not at 21 though. I love the guy, but that's too early.
So cooler heads prevailed, and you're thinking with your heart instead of your head instead of your heart.
Yeah. I'm all team trade back in this draft, man. They've got a lot of pieces, but this is a class that I think this is one of those guys that I think could really. He's going to outweigh his production in college because I think he might fall down a little bit because guys might not quite see him as in the Kincaid or Mayer class, but I think he's a lot closer than people are giving him credit for in terms of talent, at least.
Also, bravo, Garrett. I think moving forward, this is going to be the production level that people are looking.
Oh, great. So I got to do this every show?
Yeah, I mean,
come on, man.
Man, look,
next
week
it's got to be like player cards with trades and grades and
this is the level of production people will come to expect from the lightning round moving forward. You did it to yourself.
Well, here we go. That's all our grades on Darnell Washington, and we're all pretty uniform on that. So let's move on to sleepers. Jamie, you started. Craig, why don't you go ahead and give us yours?
All right, so this is going to come off as a bit homery because I am a Miami Hurricanes fan, but my guy's going to be Will Mallory. So we're talking about 6'4.5", 240-pound tight end. He's got 32.25-inch length arms and 9 3/8 hands. So what I like about Will is that he's much better athlete than even I realized being a Hurricanes fan. Like when I went back and rewatched some stuff, I mean, he ran a 4.5, 4.40, and he had some elite 10 and 20 yard splits. And he also tested very well in explosiveness with he had 36.5-inch vert. He was over 10 inches in the broad. And, when you go back and watch him on field, it shows up a little bit, especially in the open field when he gets an opportunity to open up. I mean, Garrett, what's the word about guys who run fast? What are they doing? Pop quiz.
What are they doing when they run fast?
Yep. What was the word? I gave it to you last week. It's pop quiz.
Did you? Oh, damn.
Don't worry about it. He's sliding.
Sliding. No, the kids say they're sliding.
There you go. He's sliding.
Yes. All right.
There you go.
All right.
Yeah, all good. All good. It's next time. Hey, you got it. No worries. So yeah, he can really move, man. And you can see him actually running away from safeties and linebackers. Once he gets the ball in space, and he's got some pretty shifty feet. He's made some people move out on the edges. He's made some people miss out on the edges with cutbacks. some decent stop and start. Now, he's not the most physically gifted athlete. He looks a little stiff at times, but the testing kind of lined up with some of the stuff that I saw when I went back and rewatched. He played in the offense that cycled through 3 different quarterbacks in a new offensive scheme, and his numbers still improved year over year. So it's something you love to see. Another guy that can stretch the seam vertically, can give you some action outside of the hashes as well. He demonstrated all of the above in his performance against North Carolina last year. So here's kind of really quickly something that I think, and I mentioned this to you guys before. One of the reasons why you don't necessarily have to go tight end early is because you can get like some of the bargain versions of dudes that are higher up on the board that actually have more athleticism. And to me, Mallory is like a budget version of Kincaid. And he's also, I think, going to be 24 if you like older tight ends as rookies. So you have to spend less draft capital on it. So look, everybody wins. So super soft hands. As far as the negative side, because of course, if he was this fantastic, he'd be a higher prospect. He gives effort as a blocker, but he's not a great blocker, but he's a better blocker than Kincaid. So there's that. It's kind of limited on his route tree. He also has this thing with in breaking out, breaking routes where he's supposed to be really sharp, that he rounds them off. He'll have like the occasional random concentration drop. And other than that, I think he's a guy that if you're really looking for a tight end with some athleticism that you want to use in a vertical passing game to really threaten the seams, someone you can get and stick in and allow him to develop behind Everett if you want him to play a similar role moving forward, and you don't have to spend first round draft capital to do it. And as far as the grade goes, got a low 3rd round grade on him, so just above 4th. I have him at a 70.
Okay. All right. Jamie, now I'm going to let you go, and just be careful here, okay?
I think I got it.
Okay. All right. All right.
You're going to trip me up. All right. So my tight end sleeper is Old Dominion tight end Zach Kuntz.
Yep.
I was warned not to let the C word slip, so I'm going to be very deliberate in
It looks
pronouncing
like it. It looks like it.
Should we put the accent over the O? I mean the U. Sorry, not O. U.
You.
So Zach Kuntz is a large-framed, very athletic, very long-limbed tight end. He runs well. He actually creates some. No, Stanley, I'm not going to say the word. He actually creates surprising separation at the top of his routes. You can see it on his in and out breaking routes. He'll leave linebackers and safeties a couple yards behind and create separation. I wish his quarterbacks could have gotten him the ball more consistently, because it seemed like they left him standing around with nothing to do more often than not. But he is able to create separation. He has pretty strong hands. I would like to see him be a little bit more physical at the catch point at times. Sometimes when he has to extend outside of his frame, he can have trouble reeling those balls in. He has trouble battling guys off at the catch point at times. I would also like to see him be more physical as a blocker. He's more of a speed bump than a roadblock. I think I used that phrase last week. He's not somebody who's going to be overly physical or drive guys off the line. He'll get in their way. He'll throw a shoulder. He'll bump them a little bit, kind of buy time. He's a little bit better as a move blocker in space, but even then he looks a little hesitant, like he's not really sure where he's supposed to go. But the athleticism is there. The length is there. The playmaking ability is there. With his frame and his athleticism, he is a guy who should be able to make plays in the intermediate and deep parts of the field, up the seams and in the middle of the field. And I think that's what the Chargers are looking for. And he should also come relatively cheap. He's not going to be a 1st-round pick. He probably won't be a 2nd-round pick. He's a guy who had some injury issues, didn't play. I think he only played 1 full season at Old Dominion, transferred from Penn State, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he did.
But if you're looking for somebody in the 3rd or 4th round, there could be some real value there, some real upside, actual upside, not wishful thinking upside like with Trey McKitty. So I have a 72 on Zach Kuntz. And I think, like I said, he's probably going to go somewhere in the third or fourth round, even in spite of his athleticism. There's a lot of things to work on with him, but there's a lot of potential there, a lot of things to develop.
All right. Watched him. We'll talk about him in a sec together. So the guy that I am going to talk about, my sleeper here, is Luke Schoonmaker out of Michigan. He's got great size, 6'5", 251. He's an athlete at that size too. Though he's a little light, he's got frame that you could really build on. As you can see, he's starting to pack on muscle there in his last season. The Wolverines lined him up everywhere. They put him in the backfield, put him on the wing, inline, out wide as a tight end, or as a wide receiver with the wide receivers. And he can attack all three levels of the field. My favorite part about him is his blocking. His blocking technique is so impressive in the run game. Watched about 12 tight ends. One of my favorite blockers in this class. He just knows what he's doing. Hands are really good in the block game. The base is strong. Michigan even put him on the edge and had him pass protect a lot. So he went against pass rushers. That's how good he was. That's how much they trusted him on the line. For the Knox, didn't produce a lot in college until last season. He also didn't get a lot of targets either. His route running is good, but I think at the top of his routes, he kind of rounds off some routes, could improve, kind of weakens his steps at the top of routes, something he's going to have to work on. But Luke Schoonmaker has all the tools to build on, from his frame, speed, blocking ability, his wiggle after the catch. Once he enters the NFL, he could be a good starter if developed right. I think the athleticism and blocking ability makes him a tight end 2 right away with some room to grow. You could put him on the field early on. This is the kid I would not mind taking a chance on. I think he's going to go day 3-ish. So let's talk about our grades and then just this class as a whole. Boys, how'd you guys grade I actually watched 10 tight ends. And since you guys can't count right, I'll go ahead and start so you guys can figure out how you're going to be counting these guys off. So I'll start. Number 10, I've got Davis Allen, the Clemson tight end, at 60. I got Josh Wiley, the Cincinnati tight end, at 63. My sleeper here, Luke Schoonmaker, at a 64. Zach Kuntz at 65. Tucker Kraft at 71. Luke Musgrave at 75 at number 5. Darnell Washington with a 79 at number 4. A guy we didn't talk about, but a guy I like a lot, Sam Laporta at 80 as my tight end 3. Michael Mayer at number 2 with an 83, and Dalton Kincaid, my tight end 1, at 85. Jamie?
Yeah, so I have 7 guys graded. My sleeper is my number 7, Zach Kuntz at 67. I have Luke, is it Schoonmaker or Shoemaker? Schoonmaker. I have Zach Schoonmaker at 69. My number 5 is Luke Musgrave with a 76. I have Darnell Washington at number 4 with a 79. Michael Mayer with an 80 is my number 3.
Wait a minute.
What?
Go ahead. Number 2 means?
Number 2 is Matt. I want to say Matt Laporta. It's not Matt Laporta.
Sam Laporta.
Sam Laporta at 82.
As your tight end 2 above Michael Mayer. Okay. All right.
Sir.
Woo.
And Kincaid is an 84 is my number 1 overall.
That's hot. Ooh, that's a hot take. All right. Craig, where are you at?
So I have 9. At 9, Zach Kuntz with a 68. At 8, Will Mallory, 70. At 7, Luke Schoonmaker, 72. At 6, Tucker Kraft, 77. At 5, Luke Musgrave with 79. At 4, I've got Darnell Washington with an 80. At 3, I have Michael Mayer with an 83. Ooh. And at 2, I have Sam Laporta with an 84. And Dalton Kincaid, number 1, with an 85.
Sam Laporta. Nobody's talking about how high he should be, but man, he should be with this Kincaid and Mayer class. Absolutely. So what? So we talked about drafting, Kincaid or Mayer in the first round. We talked about Darnell Washington. We obviously love Sam Laporta, but I just pulled some numbers here just because of how good the middle round of this tight end class is. To me, in rounds 2 through 5, 6 is probably pushing it. There are so many athletes at this tight end position. Your mid-round tight end scores with these RAS scores, which takes all your athletic testing numbers. So let's just go through the list. Sam Laporta, 9.49. Darnell Washington, 9.90. Luke Musgrave, 9.77. Tucker Kraft, 9.52. Zach Kuntz, a perfect 10 in his RAS score. Luke Schoonmaker, 9.75. Even these guys that weren't like high-end athletes, Will Mallory, 9.02. Josh Wiley with an 8.87, which is really impressive for him, but he's low in this class because there's so many athletes. Brenton Strange, 8.75. Davis Allen, 8.55. Payne Durham, 8.71. That's 11 tight ends. You can bank on athleticism and get them rounds and rounds later. In fact, all 11 of those guys tested better than Michael Mayer, who had an 8.08. 8.08 is pretty good for a tight end, but these are insane athletes in this middle rounds of this class, and a guy that you can absolutely take a swing on that have a ton of potential. And man, these 9+ grades of these guys is just insane. Guys that I'm willing to bank on later on than take a guy like Mayer or a guy like Kincaid in the first round.
Yeah, Craig mentioned, bargain version in the mid rounds. Watching Musgrave, I had very similar Kincaid vibes. I think he's very similar. He might be a better blocker than Kincaid. Similar athleticism, ability to make plays in the middle of the field, run and catch afterwards. There are lots of guys that are going to be available in rounds 2 through 4 that are going to add a lot of value. Different points in their development, but all guys who have opportunities to produce and contribute on some level, whether it's blocking, receiving, or both. There's an opportunity for those guys to produce and contribute.
Yeah. So what's your guys' ideal round to take a tight end?
I think you start looking at it in the second round, unless the board just gets completely blown up and the edges and the wide receivers are gone. I'm not doing it in the first, but if you start looking in the second round and beyond, I think you're going to find somebody in the second or third round who steps in and produces right away.
Yeah, I would look at Darnell Washington or Sam Laporta in the second round. If they're there, to me, I think that's a perfect spot for either of them.
I think you could even make an argument for Musgrave towards the end of the second round as well.
Maybe.
And all three of those guys will probably be available depends. Musgrave still getting some first round hype. You might have a good shot to get one of those three names near the back end of the first round if you were to trade back, or if you were to make a move to move up into the second, whatever scenario you play out. But to me, the sweet spot is also going to be that second to third round range.
Yeah, that second round, if you can, Musgrave, maybe you might be able to put in that conversation. Second round with Laporta and Washington. If you can get the Kraft, Kuntz, maybe in the third, Schoonmaker, you got Wiley, you've got Mallory in the fourth, Strange in the fourth, Davis Allen, Payne, Durham in the fifth-ish. There's some tiers there of guys who can get, and all high-end athletes.
That's the question kind of comes in, is what are you looking for that tight end to be this season? If the idea here is to have someone that helps you improve your running game, then we know who doesn't. If you want a guy that's more of a vertical seam threat, then there are a few of those that you can get your hands on. You don't necessarily have to spend a first round pick on it. And if we're talking about guys that are going to be more developmental this year and play in spurts, then I don't know if you want to necessarily have to spend a first round pick on that.
Yeah. I love the depth in the second, third round bleeding into the fourth of this class. That's why I would absolutely pass on Mayer and Kincaid. While they've got some talent, there's too many question marks around those two that I would not spend a first round pick on either of them. If you're trading down, you can then consider it, but at 21, man, wait. There's so much talent in the middle here.
And you just have to look at where the strength of the draft are. Tight end is maybe the deepest position, and it's probably the most talented it's been in years. And you can look at the positions that are super top heavy, and some of those positions are positions of need for the Chargers. And I know that they say that they don't draft for need early on, but I mean, need kind of lines up with some of the higher names on their boards more often than not. So really consider taking or holding off on the tight end, focusing more on wide receiver and edge. You can throw cornerback in there. So yeah, there are options.
Yep. All right, guys. Well, we got linebackers and edge next week, and then we'll get on to wide receivers. So we're good, guys. We appreciate you guys watching this. Appreciate you guys tuning in on a Friday night. Enjoy your weekend, and we will see you next time.
Thanks, everybody.
Salute.